This is a select board special meeting. Originally, it would focus on the financial planning tool, and then we had a request from the Conservation Commission to do a relatively short presentation, which we went ahead and agreed to. So I'm going to ask the lady from the Conservation Commission to please come up.
Okay.
And then we will move into the conclusion of her presentation, and so on. We will move into.
Where do you want to
Go over here on that side, Don, so we can get you on a microphone.
Here, I can give her Scott as well until you come here.
Scott not coming?
Oh, no, he
He
is.
just pulled in.
Okay.
There you
Well,
go.
he'll be there.
Yeah, he just
All
pulled
right,
in.
we,
Okay.
all right.
Oh, I got it.
You talk and we'll listen, how's that?
All right, so little birdie told me that you guys were gonna be talking about money today. And particularly the possibility of some funding coming from the rescue fund. And, so, so on the chance that there's an opportunity here, just wanted to make you aware of some needs that we have as the Conservation Commission in working on taking care of town-owned land. So on your list, the first one I wanted to mention is at the Maud Jones Memorial Forest. I had this on the agenda for your select board meeting 2 weeks ago. I had to pull it because we hadn't actually officially voted. So we have done that. We've met with Steve on site. I've talked to the police department. But at the place where you park at the kiosk on Garrity Road, you can pull in maybe 2 cars head in. Otherwise, they're at the side of the road. Steve has scoped it out and come up with how you could come in and go right and have 3 spaces, go left and have 3 spaces, minimal amount of trees to come down. But the cost of doing this, it wasn't ever in our budget. So the figure that Steve had quoted me is beyond what we could do. So maybe this is an opportunity, because as Steve says, when he's plowing, if cars are parked there, they're in the way. Talking with the police department, it will have good line of sight, plus they would appreciate if there was a sign that said no parking after dark, so that there's no reason for cars to be in there. But it's a spot that's used year-round, so winter, spring, summer. And if anybody's visiting the cemetery across the street, this is where you can park too. So it serves multiple uses and doesn't quite seem like it should be on solely on the Conservation Commission budget. So if you have an opportunity to do this, it's definitely justifiable as a safety issue for being able to have cars parked there safely. And here for the select board is a handout for each of you just to show what that site looks like. If, Andy, if you need the official motion thing, we would be ready if you wanted to. We have voted, we've done everything we could except we have no funding for it.
Yep.
So it would be up to you guys to see if there's a way that it could be done, and perhaps this certain fund might be a way to do it. Any questions about the Maud Jones site?
No.
All right. So the next one that I wanted to mention is at the town forest. And the town forest is the most used town-owned property that we have. Well, outside of athletics at Little River Park, but and as we've mentioned before, our trails have taken a beating in the last 2 years with everybody out and about. There are a number of wooden bridges out there, 8 of them. Trails Committee has identified all of them and inventoried them and prioritized them. And in our current fiscal year, we didn't know this a year ago to ask for funding for it. And we now have this information, and we've put in for 3 bridges in next fiscal year, hoping that maybe the 3 highest critical ones we could still somehow manage to get done in this current fiscal year, because they are the highest need. But again, we don't have any specific earmarked funding for this, but we're estimating about $2,000 to replace bridges number 2, 4, and 8, which have been identified as the highest, and some of them are broken. So the stringers have broken. And people use these trails year-round too, so as it gets icy and snowy, we're getting into that. So if some funding could happen for that, we already have our permit in hand from DES, so it's a permit by notification, because it's a replacement. We're good to go. In fact, we'd like to do these before winter. Steve?
Oh, it's not really a question. In August, this got brought up, and
Mr. Brown had asked me to walk out there and look at them all
Yeah.
and see how, if they really were that bad, they are
They're
that bad.
awful.
We did walk out there, they're bad, so
Okay.
they really do, those really do need to get replaced.
And
At
this,
some point, like sooner than later, they're not in good shape.
Trails Committee is actually meeting tonight. They are ready to go. If there was some funding to take care of materials, they would build it. So it's volunteer labor that needs the materials paid for. And they'd get on it in the next couple of weeks if there was some way to fund that.
do we have to wait on deciding that at all for any reason? I just, it's a no-brainer to me. It's dangerous.
Understand?
So I have money in the paving budget, because we encumbered money. I have 9,000 left in paving after encumbered money last year. You might be able to take at least the 2 out to do the 2 bridges, if that would be okay with
Three
them.
bridges.
Three bridges.
Sorry, 3, my bad.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, I just wanted to know how fast. we
I'm
were.
just saying that one you might be able to, I might be able to swing
Yep.
out of the paving budget that we
Okay.
didn't spend from encumbered, because we encumbered a bunch of money from the previous year too, so.
Yeah,
there is
and
money left.
we even have an inside angle on buying the materials wholesale.
Oh, wow,
So
that's great.
we would have to use that connection too to see about getting those things purchased and then paid for.
And this time they're gonna be pressure treated, so these
Yes.
bridges will last a lot
Yes.
longer than the ones you've been
Yes.
using in the past,
That's
which is
the
important.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have good skills with the people that are on the Trails Committee, and some that spent, like one that spent 18 years working for Appalachian Trail,
Yep.
doing trails. So
Yeah.
he knows of what he speaks.
Yes.
So, yeah, we have a good crew, and they're raring to go.
Great.
So,
Let me ask a question. You have some money encumbered?
I used encumbered money, so
Yeah.
there's still some money left in paving.
So do you have enough to,
I have enough to probably do 3 bridges if it's $2,000.
I'm sorry, the 3 bridges would
If,
be
yeah, if
$2,000?
they're gonna be that 2,000, I can do the 3 bridges if that's what you guys want me to do.
Yep.
That's up to you 3 though. I don't have a problem with it at all.
So we could make a motion?
Yeah,
If,
We have one more to do.
can you do the last one, please?
okay, so at Little River Park, we've been working on a project there where it's, as you remember, the Granger portion is all for athletics and has no conservation easement. The Mills portion is under conservation easement, and that borders the Little River. We've already put up a really beautiful kiosk. It probably should win an award with National Park Service, but, and then there's QR codes at some stations as you make your way down to the river. Well, it has been a bear of a time getting our permit from DES, and they decided it was a big deal, not a little deal, so it cost us a lot of money. And we were thousands of dollars into it when we were finding out it was going to be more, and it's like, can't go back, because you've got nothing out of what you already spent. So we forged ahead. A lot of it was through a grant that we had through Lamprey River Advisory Committee, but not all. So what we were able to accomplish was getting the permit, having the wetlands identified, getting the kiosk up, doing the QR codes, and now we need the footbridges that get you to the final destination point where you can stand there on the floodplain of the little river and see what people go down there to see. But to get there, the first thing you have to cross is the rusty culvert. So you have to make sure you don't put your foot through the rusty culvert on top, and then there's a wet area that you either go through it, around it, but either way, it's, could be ice, could be erosion, could be just a bunch of muck. So we want a footbridge over that next one. So again, the cost is about $1,500. It might be higher, because we're not sure. We probably should be anchoring that in place in case it would lift to try to float away, but
and where did you get that price from?
the price is basically the trails, the bridges that they're constructing or proposed to construct are running about $35 a linear foot. So it's based on the length of these 2 segments that we would have to do, and cost estimate based on that.
Have you looked at these at all?
There's no bridges there.
It's to me.
No bridges there?
There's a
No,
culvert that's
the-
rusted.
The original plan for these, I thought, was to try to use locust wood that was cut off town.
We were
line,
unable to
right?
identify a source.
I went out with a bunch of, we couldn't find anything big enough. Those are these bridges, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There's a rusty culvert that bounces up and down when you step on it, and a bunch of old broken pallets. That's what they're walking across now to get to them. I've been down there too with, I think I went down with Ann, like
So-
a while ago.
So who would do the work?
The Conservation Commission, even either ourselves, plus there's some volunteers from wherever, but we just need to be able to buy the materials, and we're ready to put some labor into it ourselves. But we're this close to the finish line on this total project.
Yeah, which is
And,
exciting to wrap it
So,
up.
But what's the cost? You have the cost for the
yes, it's
materials?
be about $1,500 in materials.
1,500?
Yes.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Okay.
So,
And the other thing, we have the permit on this, and it has to be completed by August, which is the other reason why it has to get done in this current fiscal year. Don't want to go through that again, don't want to miss that window.
Okay.
salt.
Go get them.
Is it Morton?
Hello?
So, I would like to move that we expend $8,500. We'll find a source of funding for this at some other time, but it'll allow them to proceed with these particular projects. In my view, they're liabilities.
I agree.
And unfortunately, they keep telling me in these meetings, oh, this particular thing is a problem. I was like, oh, geez.
Yeah, I've been in all these woods, and these are all really important issues.
So I would move that, and we will find where we can get the money from.
Okay, well, we're down to 6,500.
Okay, so, but it'll allow them to move forward, because especially the second one, that needs to be done as soon as possible.
Can I read this just to delineate the motion?
Yes.
And that would include 6 parking spaces at Maud Jones Memorial Forest for an estimated amount of $5,000. Bridge replacement of the 3 bridges in the worst condition, number 2, number 4, and number 8 in the town forest, and repair of the river trail at Little River Park, basically replacement of a rusty broken culvert with a short footbridge, and that would encompass the 3 tiers of the
Yeah, and be
$8,500
careful with the wording,
expenditure.
because we're replacing the culvert with a short footbridge, and the water barrier mud spot with another span, so it's 2 spans,
Okay.
actually.
So the Little River Park component includes 2 new bridges to replace the rusty broken culvert and the pallets.
And should we, because we are not 100% clear, allow for like a $500, just so they don't have to come
Not
back?
to exceed.
Yeah, well, like, yeah, just a little bit of a buffer, is that something we can do, just so that if they do?
Sure. $500 extra,
Yeah, just
so a total of $9,000.
don't spend it if you can, help it, but if you have it, then that way at least you have to come back just to get that last few pieces of wood.
That's fine.
So you've asked for a total of 9,000 now in the motion? Is that
With
right?
the clarifications that Andy gave.
Quick question, is there likely to be any community reaction to the parking lot expansion? And I just throw that out there, having dealt with
Great idea.
even minute
When it
parking
was
lots.
on the select board agenda for the 18th, or whatever the last time was, when we almost did it, I did get 2 people that contacted me, and one of them was familiar with the conservation easement, which we had already checked. And it's recreational use is one of the intended purposes of the Mont Jones Forest. And it's an incidental thing towards, but it doesn't in a way violate the easement. And that was the only comment we had. So it was out there on the public list once.
Yep, my
Should
only
we
concern
add
for the
it, yeah.
board would be that
Right.
it wasn't on the agenda.
Okay.
So should we add it to the agenda for the?
We have a motion that's been seconded, motion passes. I'd
Was
like
it-
to do,
Was it seconded?
Yeah.
yes, she seconded it.
I was seconding, but he hadn't said that yet, so should we go ahead? I don't want to ever not allow the town to speak if they have, is that something we should put this parking lot on the agenda, just so if anyone does have concerns?
You could, if you wanted to.
You're saying you got 2 people when,
This one is, the second one for me is the most timely one.
yeah, that's crisis right now. So,
I'd like the motion repeated.
Okay.
I'm confused now on what the motion is. I'm sorry.
so Andy, could you help us?
Yeah, the motion was a 3-point motion encompassing expenditure of $8,500 for expansion of the Maud Jones Memorial Forest parking lot, replacement of 3 bridges in the town forest, and the addition of 2 new spans in Little River Park on River Trail. And the 2 spans would be replacing a rusted culvert and pallets.
Okay, I get a second.
And then I was suggesting that we might have an additional $500 for funds, just because we're unsure of the wood prices as they change.
And that's to be added to the motion.
So then, yes, if we add that to the motion. And then you were suggesting possibly making sure that the town was,
I just raised that caution for the board,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
sometimes people get upset about parking lot expansion, and this wasn't an agendized item, so.
So the motion is the motion's for $9,000, is that right?
correct?
Can I get a second?
I have seconded it before I knew it was, yeah, so I guess,
Having this a second.
good, I'll be a second. I just, as long, I hear what you're saying, so I want to be cognizant of that. So if you feel that when it already came up and it was discussed, that there's not anyone upset, then I feel that is,
And I know parking lot sounds harsher than it is.
yeah.
The parking
It's
spaces.
it's 6 spaces.
All right.
It,
right.
hopefully, and, you know, Steve's got it very well laid out. He's already flagged some areas. He's minimized the, you know, the only small trees. Minor work, it's gravel, or it's not, you know, paved in any way, so
Okay.
it's what we got on the side of the road, but tucked up
You
in
won't
the
even
trees.
see it from the road when you drive
Oh.
by. It's not-
So you feel comfortable it's not going to be a big impact on the,
Oh, God, no. I think the biggest tree we're cutting down is like 5 inches. All the other ones is little scrub brush. I tried to fit it so we didn't really cut any trees down at all.
yeah,
All right, the motion's for the approval of $9,000, right?
yes, and I
Okay.
seconded that.
So we have a second, so the motion passes, but I would like
You need
to
to
do a roll
vote.
call vote. Selectman Bugby?
Yes.
Selectperson Casper?
Yes.
Selectman Brown, yes.
Great, thank
You know,
you.
Steve just handles the whole parking lot deal, that's great.
It only
It's
was
his
3
shop that has to do it, so.
Thank you, Dawn.
But the others were definitely, you know, front line on for
Great.
the footbridges, so.
Thank you.
So go tell Deb, get that wood.
Tell Deb before.
Okay, she's ready to go. The whole committee is ready to go.
They're-
So
they're
they wanna,
going, I
they
know.
wanna get out there and build.
I'm familiar with them.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is John Tappan
Sorry for the
for
delay.
discussion of the financial planning tool.
Okay. The financial planning tool, we're now looking at version 0.04. So on the revision page, I have added a worksheet to the workbook, and we'll get to that in just a moment. And down here on version 0.04, you can see date entries for worksheets that were updated. Last time we met, I reported that I had not heard from the library trustees, and I have now heard from the library trustees a couple days ago. And they said that the entries that are already there are fine with them, and that the type of estimate is educated guess. So I've made that entry. And no changes from what was sent out to them previously.
Great.
There's also has been updates to every page that Steve Bullock has input to, including some things that he sent me today that I haven't even gotten in yet. I think I got everything entered, but I haven't gotten the links to, all of the links put into the references that he sent. The beginning of year balance, I only made a tiny change here, and that is, I went and looked ahead for the trustees of trust funds. Right now, we are at 0.90%, and previously I had a slightly lower number there. And when I looked at what we have maturing in February, I think we'll actually be able to do a little better. So we will knock it down from 0.9. We won't go up by much either. So, and we will be going down in June when we have some good certificates maturing. Before I show you what's new in buildings, this new worksheet, I want to look at the town buildings. So at the last meeting, Selectperson Casper had a request that she would like to be able to see the town buildings total cost by building. So I came up with 3 different ways of doing that, and to skip the details, the method that I decided on was to code all of these entries with a 3-letter code at the beginning that indicates what building it is. So Town Hall Annex, the code is THA. and so forth. The Lee Public Library, the code is LPL, and so forth. And then I added this new worksheet. So this has two tables. This first table lists all of the buildings, and there are 16 of them, and in alphabetical order with the code. And this spreadsheet goes and looks up what's on the town buildings worksheet. How many references are there, how many line items, what's the total dollar amount, and what fraction of the total is that. And it totals that column, and then it also brings in from town buildings, town hall, the actual total calculated on that worksheet page and compares them. In this way, if there's anything that didn't get properly coded with that three-letter initial code, it would show up as unidentified because this sum would not equal that sum. So that's a check, just in case you make an entry and make a mistake.
John, the title of that is buildings, right by building name, but I see it as highway spreader hangers. What are
Yes.
highway spreader hangers?
Yeah, so we got, there's 16 of these, and a lot of these are things you wouldn't even think of as buildings. So highway spreader hangers is, the highway spreaders have, right now I think he has just one frame where you can back the truck underneath and pick up the spreader. Those got two. But, and I don't, does one of them have a roof?
None of them.
None of them have roofs over them. So in an ideal design, you have these frames that you can lift the salt spreader onto, and they have a roof over them, and that's where they can stay during the summer. You can
Okay.
quickly put them in the truck, take them off. So a lot of these things are the little things like that. It really shows up when I get down to this next table where they've been sorted by cost. So here, you're looking from the most expensive on down to the least expensive. And this is where you have these little things: cemetery storage shed, highway spreader hangers. This highway equipment shed, there's a very small shed that he has some equipment in. Highway fuel tank, well, this is the roof over the fuel tank. So counting these things as buildings, that's why there's so many of them, there appears to be so many of them. And it's important to recognize that these are things that we use, that we rely on, and they don't last forever. So the roofs need to be replaced and so forth. So that's why it's 16. So this second table goes from what's the most expensive town office building. It has 2 entries and it's 1.5 million. Public safety complex, there are 8 line items for that. Right now it totals 862,000 and so forth. On down to those little things that are $5,000 or $7,000. So this is new. This is a way of looking at what are the buildings that are the big cost drivers. So that's a change from previous. I think that this spreadsheet is one that you would only occasionally look at. It's not something that you would study when you're actually deliberating about any particular line item and when is it going to be done, or is it going to be done. So Steve has sent me quite a number of updates. I haven't gotten all of them in yet, but down at the bottom, we've got a cost for the library air conditioning replacement. I have for the tool shed, this is just my plain guess and educated guess on the cost of roof replacement and painting the tool shed, including the cost of lead abatement. When I went looking online to get guidance on this cost, it was very easy to find numbers. it was very difficult to find numbers that you could apply to something like a tool shed.
But that sounds.
But,
The tool shed, is that the building out back?
That's-
With
yeah,
the
that-
sliding door in it?
yes,
Okay.
The hobo shed.
the, commonly called the hobo shed, but it's on the historic register as a tool shed. And as far as the lead abatement, it's easy in that the ground is level. It's just a one-story building. A little bit of a complication in that the highest sides, the two gable ends, have limited access. So one gable end faces towards the town hall. You've got stairways and railings and a ramp there. The other gable end faces towards that container. And it's only a narrow, like 3 feet.
Is that container staying there forever, do we know? I don't even know what that is for.
Not forever.
Not using.
So we could actually
So
get
it's-
rid of it and it would
right.
make that easier.
The last I'd heard, our police chief had expressed some interest in it as storage.
Okay.
I don't know if that's still true.
Can I ask what the difference between an educated guess and a plain guess is?
Yes, sure. So, plain guess is, you haven't gone and looked up anything, you haven't done any calculations, you're just saying,
It's a wag.
Yeah.
yeah, if you wish, yeah.
There you go.
Whereas this educated guess is, all of this ratings is definitely subjective. The goal here was to give a rating of an A through E to give you a rough idea of, how good is this estimate. So I called this one an educated guess because I actually looked up and found roofing companies that gave decent examples of roof replacements. And I know the size of the building, so I could do some arithmetic and come up with that number. Whereas this one, I did try to do similar things, but I felt so little confidence in the numbers I was finding that I call it a plain guess.
Okay.
This one, or this one up here, the gym market research, that's where Steve, whoa, oh, I don't care about that. So that's where Steve actually has a quote. I don't think it went out for multiple bids, but
No, I said something, the company that won that got the HVAC contract with the town just gave me that.
so we have a single quote, so that's like market research. That's similar as if you went to a website for a product you're going to purchase.
Which that needs to be replaced, they do not have any, in order to make the air conditioning work and that next over there, that has to happen.
So that's gonna go ahead soon, right? You know,
It's a lot of money, so I just put it in there,
okay.
because
No, that's important to know all the things.
Yeah, the one that's a real lot of money is fire department,
yeah, that
I
was a
mean,
lot
police
of
department.
money. Police department one, right there.
AC Police Department. So that's the one that's 21,000.
So I just want to point out on that one, if we want to do the police department air conditioning unit, look at what the lead time is in order to even get the equipment.
Right, so
10 to 12 weeks.
move along.
So if you do decide to do it, you don't really want to start waiting until February,
Right.
because I think that's unfortunately what everything's gonna be like with the way the shipping is
And
3 months to get something.
With this, is this with an eye to energy efficiency and?
This would be, because this would be all brand new.
Okay,
And this air conditioning system hasn't worked in 8 years,
right.
9
So
years.
obviously not efficient.
Yeah, this is where they have the window air conditioners.
Yeah, this is where they have the window ACs, and I don't believe that they have any airflow from any vents, because the air handling unit in their section does not work at all.
Okay.
That's where all the money is in the air handling unit.
And that may well be ARPA fundable as
Yes,
well.
that's exactly
We
it.
just completed that in Deerfield on our
Good.
similar building.
Obviously, that's a lot of money, so you go out to bid, but that was from the people that won, so I figured
Yeah,
they'd be the
that's
best to at least put in this, to give us a somewhat estimate on what it would cost.
Andy, is it possible to have some kind of a list of things like this that need to get handled more quickly than maybe other things? Like, I don't know, just to try to, so we come back and deal with those right away.
A piece of that, at least roughly in fiscal years, is
Okay.
this entry here.
Perfect.
Is, what fiscal year do you plan to do it in?
Yep.
And that's put in here as fiscal year 2022, so the year we're in right now.
Yep, so it's saying, let's do it and put it there. Perfect. Thank you.
So, I don't know if you
We
want
put
to...
the library AC in there because I got an email that they wanted me to present the highway, or the library air conditioner for ARPA funds. So I didn't actually get a quote on it, but it's
I guess.
a little bit bigger of an area than what the police department has, so I just extrapolated it out and added a little bit to it. I mean, if the police department's gonna be that much money, we can at least figure the library's gonna be the same.
Do they have the same issues with the air and all those things that made the other one expensive?
No, theirs mostly is outside. The problem with the police departments is the air handler's just about as big as the bathroom that it's in.
Yeah.
So there's no way to get it out easily. You have to
Okay.
take the whole ceiling down in order to even get it out, because it's in the
So that makes it
ceiling.
more expensive for here.
Yeah.
So the library wouldn't have that problem.
It might not be, I just
Okay,
went
just-
by, I just went based on the tonnage
It's possible
that
to
would
be
be in it and the BTUs that it put out.
Perfect.
Do you have something in here, the thing you identified with the library, the outside siding that's rotting away? Is there something in there with that?
Not
Or
yet.
not
Not yet.
Okay.
It's a
Um,
never-ending list. It grows every day.
There are
I
two,
forgot about that one, to be honest with you, I forgot.
That's fair. That's how it
we
works.
haven't talked about them, but there is the library building, Lee Library Building Capital Reserve Fund, and that just has two, I made these up, sort of placeholder, knowing that the plan was to use all of that money.
Right.
So, and with a guess that this may be not happening as quickly as I previously guessed, but $100,000 of it this fiscal year and all the rest of it next fiscal year. And there is also the Library Capital Reserve Fund. And with the entries that are there, let's see if we can do this. Not bad. With the entries that are there, some of these came, actually the first, all of these in blue came from the CIP.
Okay.
And then this one that's added, this $100,000, this is Article 7, which was for, in Article 7, it was stated for addition, renovation and addition.
Yes, this year.
So renovation and addition, some of renovation and addition is some of these items up here. But this is what went to the library trustees, and they said that at this date, they were satisfied with what was listed.
Okay.
So that's why all of this is just listed this way, even though some of these items up here are probably part of this.
So you add
and
those-
this is,
If you add all those up, that's about 60 something, right? Or is it- I don't know if you have that. And then if you then look at the air conditioning and the other stuff, you get about that 100,000, is that correct? Or there's more in there?
I have no idea what the
Okay.
plan is for this $100,000 exactly.
Do you have
I've never
electrical
s-
to do too?
I've never seen a breakdown of that.
Okay.
And, or of this money over here,
Okay.
or of why some things come out of these two and some things out of town building.
Got it.
So that's, I think, for you to decide.
Great.
So, the other things that Steve has sent me updates on are highway equipment, and roads and bridges, and the transfer station. And highway equipment, the updates and additions, some of them down here, the Western Star plow truck replacement. I went and looked that up when it was purchased in 2018. And in 2018, it actually was just over 180,000. The roll-off truck is coming in this year. And then there's several attachments for skid steer loaders. Some of the attachments are exclusively for the use of the transfer station. Some are for highway department, and some, like this snow blower that's listed in the concrete breaker, would be used in both places. So I just split them, half of it with the transfer station, half of it with highway equipment. So these numbers that show up are 1/2 of the cost. These have links, so Steve went and found what he would consider purchasing, and I went through some of what the size options were, picked out what I thought were the correct sizes, and sent it back to Steve, and Steve, approved it, and that's what this little spreadsheet down here at the bottom is that thing's made in 12-inch through, well, actually it goes all the way up to 36-inch, but we're not going to buy one of those. And so out of the whole range, this is what was picked. There's a connection to make it work with the Bobcat. I just threw in truly a guess at shipping. I haven't had equipment shipped in more than a decade, so I really don't have an idea. And then you just round it off, and that's the number we put in for an estimate.
John, what's the difference between the blue and the black?
Okay, so the things that are listed here in black, these are all the different sizes that this is made in. Different sizes and different capacities.
Okay.
So 12 inches wide, 18 inches wide, and so forth. And then the hydraulic flow rate that they need for the different sizes. And of course, as you get bigger, they cost more.
Yeah.
And then all of the different options that you can add. And so the blue is what was selected to come up with the price that was used.
Okay.
So that $14,100, there it is. Now, there's two ways that this link could be put in. You could have a link to the actual manufacturer's website, which is what Steve sent me. And if this was something that you were only going to be contemplating for the next weeks or months, that would be a good way to do it. But if it's something that you might not be visiting again until next year or the year after, that link to the manufacturer's website may not work anymore because they've changed the product name and the product size and so forth. So that's why I went to the manufacturer's website and made those pages. You still can go back to exactly to the manufacturer. You can look at, this tells you the details of what sizes and features you were planning to buy.
Can I ask about that inventory management program? Is that the one you talked about last night, Steve? So, okay, so that'll be good.
Yes.
Yeah, there's two new items that down here, well, several new items. This inventory management program that Steve was talking about, it had an initial cost and then there was a annual.
Yeah, and we went to go with them, but they call me constantly trying to get me to sign up and do things with them, so they're just the ones that I used as the example.
Great.
Because looking at them, there's a ton of them, and I just look at them and I get lost.
Of course.
Like which one, which one's the best one to pick and which one's the best one to go with. You gotta do demos on them all and figure out which one's best for you.
Yeah, what you like. Yeah. But that's generally a good idea. Right?
Yeah.
The other thing that's new here is the ground speed controls for the spreaders. And that was added, again, that's in order to be able to more accurately control the,
And when your salt costs as much as it does, you need to have that control. That makes sense.
So you calibrated the pail, 250 pounds of lane mile.
Right, so you're not wasting.
Right.
Yeah, those will keep track, and you can plug into them at the end of the year and figure out how much salt or sand each truck put out.
That's great. So it pays for itself.
Yeah, they're about $5,000 each, we have 6 trucks.
Can you adjust those for low salt areas too, for conservation
Mhm.
and land areas?
Well, you can adjust them, they're adjustable from 125 pounds to 600 pounds, depending on what the operator wants to put out. You can
Great.
turn a knob. You can also they have liquid on them, so if you wanted to put magnesium out, you can
Oh,
run
wow.
calcium chloride and magnesium out of them
That
too.
makes a big difference.
and they can also connect to your GPS.
Yes, they can, and they can, if you crash, they can tell you exactly how fast you were going when you hit
Oh.
whatever object you hit.
That can help.
So can we go back to town buildings and start looking
Yes.
at these things?
But Steve is here, yes, for town building.
Oh, I thought I came back to try to get equipment and stuff taken care of.
Yes, that too.
Yeah, we still have roads and bridges and
Okay.
transfer station.
So should we go over those and then get to the buildings?
You guys can do whatever you want, it's fine. We can do the buildings now, that's fine with me.
Do we know anything, I know nobody knows anything about the infrastructure bill, but it's possible that we could get some help for roads and bridges, is that possible? I mean, nobody knows.
I haven't seen any details yet.
Yeah, me neither, okay.
So the other thing, the library trustees emailed me about, along with that library one, and I don't really know where to put it, because it doesn't fit, is broadband, they wanted something about broadband,
Yeah.
upgrading broadband, because that's part of the ARPA money, so
I thought they did that.
I got an email a couple days ago about it from Annie, so
They increased the speed and they increased their contract, but are you talking about like actually like having, besides the contract, to have actual like infrastructure?
I think so, I think that's what they were after.
Because broadband there is different than internet speed. They increase their internet speed.
I'm just,
Yeah.
they emailed me and I said, oh,
We can ask them
it's right here.
specifically.
I don't.
Maybe we have another library meeting sometime.
Let me see.
Upgrade the speed and efficiency of our broadband connections. These funds are good for covering the cost starting in March. Since our new phone and internet system was installed in April, we might be able to have those costs and ongoing costs through 2026 covered by this grant.
Yeah.
So aren't there separate broadband grants? I know that there's a lot of, I was told we didn't have any of those, so I didn't pay as much attention into those.
The broadband grants that I'm familiar with have been community-wide to improve community access.
That's what I thought,
I'm not
okay.
sure how
Individual.
microcosmic you can bring those funds down to.
Okay, that was the
Certainly look
question.
into it.
So we should also be able to increase our current 220 to 1,100, but that's over, I don't know what that means.
I know what that means, and I agree that definitely needs to happen for the library. If you want to have a functioning library where people can actually come and do their work.
But that's what they had, but I don't know,
But they already did that.
Right,
They want to get reimbursed for it. That's what it sounds like.
got it.
oh, I just didn't know where to put that in
No,
here.
that makes
So
sense, yeah.
we're in the meeting now, so
Yep.
I'll bring it up, but I don't,
Thank you for bringing it up.
that seems like it's outside my realm of what
Yeah,
my job with the town.
but thank you for letting us know.
So do you want to go on to roads and bridges and other things, or do you want to?
Well, we can talk about this, like what other questions do we have?
Okay, so if you want to look at, I mean, there's 37 line items here, so,
Can I ask a couple quick questions?
yeah.
When you looked at the roofing, that was for how far out? So 10 years for each building?
This building's at 20 now, so
Okay.
you're approaching the end of its life.
So that's on there,
But that's also on the list I gave you guys last night, that we need to go up and
right?
look, because we haven't been up there.
Okay.
PSC roof replacement,
Oh, 2030.
well, that date was my guess.
Okay.
And this was an educated guess on the cost. One of the things that's difficult to do in the estimate is, this is a building with an outrageous number of little tiny facets of roof.
Yes.
with-
They hate to do those.
Well, and we also
They
have
cost
some
money. They
bad
cost a lot of money.
areas. I wonder if they're fixable if we're.
And so when I came up with this, I biased the calculation in that direction of complicated roof structure,
Yeah, as you should.
but I may not have gone far enough. So that's why it's just an educated guess. And the 33, that's a full 30 years after it was built.
And that's the typical number of years for a roof, right?
Well, I don't know
Depends
what
on-
quality of shingles we
We're
put
in
on
New
there.
England, and like he
So
just
we'll
said,
know more
we don't know
soon.
what quality,
Yeah.
we'll try to get up there as fast as we can.
Okay.
The one thing that's not on this, and it kinda should be, kinda isn't, that just came up in an email today, in the transfer station, the fire pump
Okay.
that's in there for 150,000, that's 20 years old.
Yep.
They did their pump test. I just got the inspection report for the pump test and for the sprinkler system. Last year, we were above the manufacturer's curve for where we should be. This year, we've dropped below the manufacturer's curve for the PSI. And we've dropped 8 PSI from last year to this year, so
Could something be wrong? Like broken?
pumps wear out, they don't hold water as well, so I'm a little worried if we lose another 8%, or we lose another 8 PSI in a year, where are we gonna be? Are we gonna be
Oh, yeah.
within where we're supposed to be?
Right.
That's one of the things I just emailed when I was downstairs, because I just got it, to John, to have him look at it. They also wrote in it that our sprinkler system pipes were starting to rust, which I've said before, which is why we keep replacing individual 20-foot lengths of it on the outside where it sweats all the time in the trash floor.
Does that have a tank with it, Steve? or is
It's
it-
got a 20,000 gallon cistern. Pretty much the whole entire office underneath that is a cistern.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if you're losing PSI, there may be potential for leakage out of the
Yeah, exactly.
tank.
That's where it could be going.
So the piping that he mentioned, the piping is listed here, transfer station replaced sprinkler piping.
Right.
And this was an educated guess, and this was based on the information that Steve gave me for the unit cost that he's had for replacing 20-foot sections at a time.
Right.
And that's how this came up with, and then the 80% was for some cost efficiency when you're doing the whole thing instead of a piece at a time.
And we might not have to do every 20-foot section, because we just did one a month ago, so that one hopefully doesn't need to get done again. But it's also going from the existing Schedule 20, which is a lot thinner, and we'll put thicker, we've been putting thicker pipe up, so hopefully it lasts longer. And it's also, what's going up is galvanized, it's not black iron. And that's half our problem, is the black iron. Every time it sweats, it forms a little water drop on the very bottom of the pipe, and that's where every single pinhole that's leaking is coming in, is where every single water droplet comes
So you
off.
improve all of it, it won't go as bad.
Hopefully.
This is a lot of information, which is awesome, but I'm wondering, are we capable of?
So on this one, I entered 2023. I don't know when it's really needed. The fire pump has been in the CIP and is still listed here for 2026. I will take a look at that report you have and we'll
So
talk about
it
it.
currently says there are no deficiencies, we're still within the level.
Okay.
But that might be high, you might be able to get the pump rebuilt for a lot less than a brand new one for 150,000. I don't
Okay.
know, I need to call Superior. First of all, I need to call them and ask them what,
Inspection, right?
well, I need to ask them what that curve means, and does it mean we're in the down
Right here.
trend of the pump? Because this pump is really no different than the pumps that are in the fire engines.
Right,
And those pumps get weaker and go bad over time.
yeah.
Because I asked a lot of questions a little while ago, like, well, it only runs once a year for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
so why is it dropping so bad? But
Which is why maybe the leak is
we don't exactly have we don't exactly have the best water, and maybe the PSI problem is because the inside of all the pipes in the building need to have a roto-rooter run through them, and maybe we're losing PSI because the inside of all the black iron's dirty. I don't know.
One of the things that we found in our own home is that the water is so filled with things in this town that all of the, well, all the piping and all the, everything we use with the water, so we actually have to put a filtration system in to preserve the life of everything we own.
And that might be the problem up there.
Yeah.
I just barely got it, I just wanted to
Yep, no,
make
that's
you
great.
guys aware.
Thanks.
Yeah, the water on the hill is terrible.
I mean, besides the
Yes.
arsenic, which is dangerous, it's the just enormous amounts of minerals.
Well,
Manganese.
so that's,
It's a big one.
one of the other things that we found out, thanks to Robin Collins, when we did those radon tests, and they did them at the highway garage. He tested all our water for everything, and our water at the highway department and transfer station is not drinkable. It is above the level for allowable arsenic.
I noticed that we have water coolers everywhere in this town. Is that because we just don't? I mean,
This building was tested, it is drinkable.
why
Recently,
do
it
we-
was
It
tested.
doesn't taste very good.
Yeah, the water's, it's not that good. But the highway department and transfer station, the water is non-potable, you can't drink it.
That's not good. But if we don't drink it anywhere, that's different.
So are there other details you want to look at here,
Oh.
changes you want to make?
What about Old Town Hall's furnace is on here, that got
Yes.
fixed.
Oh,
That's
it did?
not one you've seen.
Can we take it off? Have we paid?
No,
for it?
not, sorry, not fixed, I got a quote, like a price,
Oh.
and they
yeah.
came in and gave us a price to,
Price fixed, not boiler fixed. Got it.
this is the estimate to redo the entire furnace and every zone pump expansion tank in the town hall.
How much was it?
14.
Ooh.
It's because you're doing you have to redo all the piping up there, it's all, and every zone pump has to go, there's 3 zones, so there's 3 pumps, 3 switches.
Yeah.
The boiler that they're gonna put in is probably a quarter of the size of the one that's currently in there right now.
It says it's wall hung in a condensing boiler.
So the one that's there now is still not good, right?
The one that's there now, they do not make parts for anymore.
So, but does it run or not?
It runs currently right now, it is running. I don't know how long it's gonna run for, and if it does break, I don't know if we're gonna get parts for it.
Okay.
And this is one of the ones that I wasn't pushing, because if the furnace did break this winter, we just drain the pipes and we would let it go, but now the library is in there and they're using the space.
They're in there temporarily, that's, so, you know,
Yeah, if work needs to be done, then that has to be.
The only good thing about this, if you were to decide to do it, if you were to renovate the building, you're not gonna move every pipe in the building to move where the furnace is. So that would still be good through any renovation you did.
So do this now, it'll still, you won't have to redo it later.
Yes,
Whatever you renovate.
that would be fine through whatever renovation you did, because
You're not moving the
I
pipes.
wouldn't think you'd be moving the furnace out of that room, because you have to move every pipe
Right.
in the entire building to get underneath it. Plus, that's currently where that's where the hot water heater is, and everything is in that one room.
And when they were looking at the town hall renovation, is that one of the things we assumed would stay? I think.
I don't know.
No, that was going to be replaced.
it's gonna be replaced.
Moved though, or replaced? Like,
Just
Um,
replaced.
right. so
It was
stay
going to be
put.
replaced. Whether it would be in the same place or not was a TBD, because
Okay,
we
so
had
was
not
it?
settled on exactly what was done with the 1968 addition.
Right, okay, great. I'm just trying to remember when I
A
looked.
lot
at
of
the
things
map.
like the baseboard heaters in the main, all the baseboard in the main hall, of course, would all be taken out,
Right,
because you gotta take out the floor and you're taking off the walls.
right, so it's easier to do then.
So the baseboard isn't gonna stay there, there's nothing to hold it up.
Right,
Um,
Okay, I just trying to figure out where that was in that. Okay.
So, this was an item that was previously estimated at $12,000.
Okay.
So now it's almost 15.
I think if we weren't doing all the zone pumps and everything else, it would be a lot less, but there's,
But you don't want to heat the whole building if you only need a part of it. Right? So you're saving money down the road to spend money. now.
yeah, I mean, there's pumps up there now that are only heating certain parts,
Right.
but they're all extremely corroded and they're about as old as the furnace that's there is now.
Right. Okay.
So, can we kind of decide on what we're doing here?
Yeah.
Because we seem to be
Everywhere.
wandering. And the thing is, at least my intention would be to get the big things out of the way. Are we gonna do something, are we not?
Yeah.
Do we need more information? Because many of the things we're talking about here are $2,000, you know,
Let's just do it.
that's nothing.
Right. But if you're gonna not do something
Yeah.
in that building, you don't want to
But I
do that,
think
so.
we need to crack the big nuts, which are not $2,000, they're hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So-
And if we're gonna do them, how are we gonna pay for them? If we can't pay for them, put them on hold.
So,
With what's listed right now, you see this year, the appropriations to trust and reserve funds was $459,000. With everything that's listed there now, if it was all done on that schedule, next year would require $1.25 million.
so that's an increase over what we normally would have spent by, of what amount? Is that, because you're saying,
In other words, instead of 460,000, you have to put in 1.27 million. If you were going to do all of these things, as well as everything on highway equipment and roads and bridges, and
okay,
because this is the total for everything.
right,
For just the buildings, where this year is raised and appropriated 104,000, next year it would need to be 641,000. And that 641,000 continues for, through 2029. I had thought that when I first started working with the spreadsheet and moving items around, saying, well, if we move this out further, it'll change how much has to be set aside, there were some funny effects that at first I didn't understand until I thought about it for a few minutes. And I think it would be useful, I just thought of this yesterday, to make a diagram that shows how these calculations work out. And because there are things in here that you can change, you can push further out, you can bring in closer, and they make practically no difference. In fact, actually, there are things in here that you can push further out and it will then cost you more.
right,
Because
cost is,
they're going up by 5% and we're not earning 5% on savings.
right,
But that's not true of everything. So I didn't have time, I just figured out how to diagram it yesterday and thought of the need. So whenever we present next, I would have a diagram that shows how this works, and you can then easily see what things will make changes and what things won't.
So could we start just now by looking at what we actually have funding through ARPA, we have money in the bank, and there are things that need to be done sooner rather than later. Is there any way that we could pull out those things so that we could at least take those off the list and get them started and paid for? Is that an option?
That's sort of what I was wondering as I look at this, is
Yeah.
what the access options to this information are. So when the select board comes to me and says, what are the things in the financial planning tool for 2023, Annie, that are over $100,000 that we want to see?
Can you do that?
What's my ability to find those and pull them, other than having a meeting?
Right, exactly. And that's great, because we can
Um,
ask a question quickly.
Well, if you wanted an answer tomorrow, give me a call.
Generally speaking.
So, because you and I can do that without having to post a meeting.
But I'm also just thinking of the board members too,
Yeah.
if they want to be able to access this information in their off time and monitor.
Again, we've talked about how do we manage this tool going forward. And this version that I have, and I have multiple backups of it, is the official version. I can, any of the select board members that want to just have a copy of it, the spreadsheet, you can do that. I can give you a copy. Right now, this version that I'm showing, I have turned off all of the the worksheets are not protected. I've turned off all the protection so that I can manipulate anything. But I have cells that are locked and cells that are unlocked so that what's intended to be user input, when I protect the worksheets, then you just are able to change the user input and not accidentally change a formula, which would then start giving you a bad answer.
And I would have no interest in editing or changing anything that was there, just if
Right.
Gary calls me and says, I want to see, the 3 or 4 items for 2023 over $100,000, and can you bring them tonight? If I could do that quickly and easily, it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that while Steve is here, and he has worked on these other things,
Yeah.
I would think it makes sense to let him go through those.
Well, this is our second, I'm a little frustrated with the process already, because we should be here looking at these big items, and as you say, these little ones aren't gonna make any real difference. I think this board needs to go through those particular lists, those big items, and determine, are we gonna do this or not? And if we're gonna do it, how are we gonna pay for it? Because right now, we're in the weeds.
Right.
Because we're talking about $2,000, $3,000, that's nothing.
Right.
We need to look at the big items and determine if we're gonna do those or not. And some of those particular things are roads and bridges. Yes, I haven't seen them yet. Some of that is gonna be paid by the state, some of it we're gonna have to save for. So those are kind of big nuts.
There's some $300,000 items in there too.
No, so they're kind of big nuts.
So we can just do the building ones now. If you've got ARPA funds,
Yeah.
you can take, if you're gonna, I mean, it's not as big as the 150, 24,000 or 21,000 for Tom's air conditioning system, that should come out of that money, or it should qualify. The fire department's ventilation thing
system.
Come out.
would come out of that, that's a big fund.
Yep.
Money item, I mean, they're still not as high as that. So right there alone's 100,000 that you could just take right off that list and delete it, and
And
you'd
then
have
just
your,
get it done, yeah.
and you could get it done. Obviously, they're gonna have to go out to bid, but it's a start.
But that's what they're working on right now, right?
I haven't tried going out to bid for anything.
No, Chief Nevitt mentioned that.
No, I don't.
We do have an RFP that is
Yes.
ready for Scott, yes.
Perfect.
The bunk rooms is 30, there's another 130. You might be able to put that under ARPA because so his plan at some point, he told me, was to split the gym in half and make them the bunk rooms and put
Yep.
like makeshift that go almost up to the ceiling. And if you did that, we'd have to definitely fix.
And that's an issue that
The
has to do with
compressor, but
staffing and health and.
There's 130,000 right there just in ARPA things, and there's 3 things off that list.
Yep.
The bunk rooms, this is not, I'm not speaking as my administrator of this financial tool. But when I hear talk about what we can do with bunk rooms, I hear people looking for a solution that's gonna be good for the next few years.
You're thinking long term.
And I think that in this building, you're more than a third of the way into its expected life.
Yeah.
And at this point, you ought to be reevaluating, what is the plan for this building for the next 15 or 20 years? What do you need?
Right.
Because when I hear that you cut a piece out of the gym, well, in 15 years from now, do you want that piece back?
Right,
Are you gonna have enough people that that gym should have been its original size?
Right. And if we have a space that has, if this turns more into the safety complex and less into the public, then you have different spaces you choose to build the bunks in than you would if you were only thinking about perimeter. So I think those, this is the challenge, I think this is where the frustration comes, and I feel what you're saying, Scott. We have such huge choices, and there's so many variables, and I think that's what is hard. So if we don't even know where our town building's gonna be in 9 years, there's so many pieces of the puzzle that are confusing for that. So I think the thing is we have to start making decisions.
So why don't you know why don't you know what's gonna be needed in this building for the next 15 or 20 years?
That's a great question. I think what I'm saying is if we are planning to, let's say we decide, I'm just gonna give you a total, this is not what I'm saying we should do and not even my first choice. Let's say we say we're gonna build a really simple box building for the library, and we're gonna move the town hall into the library. And then we are gonna have the town hall, the old town hall, become meeting space where select board meetings can be and where the town can hold other things and whatever. Then we no longer need this area, and that can go into more of the things that we need as far as bunk rooms and making sure that those things, we use it differently. So, but if it turns out that we wanted to buy the Daily building and the library stays the same way the library is, and the town hall has some other purpose, then you'd have to keep using the space. So it's jigsaw puzzle pieces. And I think that's why it's been so easy not to make decisions about anything, because there's so many variables around every single decision. Do you agree?
Yes, we as a group, the three of us, have to take the bull by the horns and set some kind of direction.
Right.
Because right at the moment, we're kind of floundering.
Right.
And in my estimation, in my opinion, we are floundering with $2,000 and $3,000, $30,000. We should be way above that in terms of dictating where things are going, because after we determine what those particular big things are, the rest of the pieces are gonna fall into place.
Great.
Can we afford all of it? No.
Right.
So we're gonna have to make some hard decisions in terms of what we can afford and what we can't
So
afford.
can we grab any of those
So-
big decisions?
So one of the big buildings here, the second most expensive building here is the Public Safety Complex, $862,000.
And what are we paying for that makes it that expensive?
A very big piece of that is the fire suppression system,
Okay.
$500,000. We're right now in an assembly space on the second floor, in a building that has an assembly space on the first floor,
Yeah.
which is part of the fire station.
It doesn't have.
It has no fire suppression system.
So we have to decide, are we
So-
gonna be committed to this building enough long-term?
What is-
with it?
What is the plan for this building for the next 15 or 20 years? And fire department and police department are two of the services we have where all of the demand is externally generated.
Right,
You don't have any discretion, you can't give them quotas
right.
and say, you can only go to
This week.
30 service calls a month, and then after that, you have to say, nope, we're
Right.
scheduling you for November.
Right,
And that, I mean, you can't go thinking, well, I'm gonna put in a fire suppression system, and then maybe 2 years later, we're gonna change bunk rooms and meeting rooms and so forth.
so the question, I guess the first question is, do we as a board see that this building is going to eventually become more focused just on the safety complex side, or are we continuing to think of it as a public safety complex? That's the first choice, right?
Yeah,
And that's driven by,
Neat.
so if you
what
don't.
do what do you foresee for fire department needs and police department needs?
So I would want to know, if it's not gonna be public use, if it's just gonna be those two public safety facility services, do you need fire suppression?
Well, if you have people sleeping here 24 hours a day, I feel like the answer is yes.
Okay.
By today's code, fire departments are supposed to have suppression.
Like, shouldn't the first people you take care of from fire,
Well, I'm thinking, if you're of the fire department, you're
Right.
here, you've got all the fire stuff,
or can you put it
Yeah.
out? Yeah.
but I don't know, that's
Not
that's
if you're
probably
living
a
here.
chief issue, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Fire
that's
fire
what
suppression systems, sprinkler systems, primarily are to protect the personnel. keep people from dying.
Are there grants that are out there for this kind of safety thing that we're not thinking of?
Not that I've uncovered. I know we have fire suppression in our historic town hall, and spend thousands on it in maintenance and updates. And I've worked with the community church, which has the same problem, and is probably spending $90,000 this year on a 10-year-old fire suppression system.
Wow, so this isn't just a one-time, this is a,
You
gonna
know,
become expensive.
Once you've got your fire suppression in, you know, it's not every year, but there are regular cost increases for inspection, and things go wrong with fire suppression.
All the time.
Leaking PSI, leaking water, that sort of thing, all the time. It's an investment that keeps sucking money.
are there alternatives that we are not thinking of?
Not for publicly occupied buildings, they really aren't.
Because when we looked at when we did plans for the new town hall, you know, the piping for the suppression system is relatively inexpensive. It's the pump and the tanks and stuff.
Yeah.
That's what's really expensive.
Okay.
So you have to maintain those, and that's expensive.
So that's not, it's not just adding to our sheet, it's adding to,
It's increasing our, yes.
it's
We
like.
typically have a professional service that annually inspects and evaluates your fire suppression system.
Which is what that report is from Superior.
So, but it's not really an option
When
to
we-
not do.
When we asked about the old town hall
Yeah.
and renovating that into meeting space, and what was maybe needed for it to be meeting space, our fire chief went to the state fire marshal's office and came back with the answer that that building will have to be sprinkled.
Yep.
Because it's a two-story wood frame building, and as meetings, as assembly space, and with 2 stories, it has to be sprinkled.
That was
And
the
we are right
property
now
owners.
in a 2-story.
Right, so it would have to be sprinkled too.
So,
Why it wasn't at the beginning, I'll never understand, but.
because we didn't have to. We
Right.
didn't. So I would want more information about number 18. So I would like somebody, maybe the fire chief,
Yeah, that's great.
to go and figure out how much exactly that would cost. So we need some kind of a professional, whatever, quote.
Yep.
Because this one's what, 11 years old, so
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot
stuff
more than
changes.
That's why it's 517.
Not only is it 11 years old, he's gone searching through file cabinets and he can't find it.
Oh, okay. So
What
we
was
don't
it
even
actually
So
have,
it's
based on?
fresh. This is a serious thing we're actually thinking about doing and we would have to do soon, so let's get a real numbers.
so Andy, if you can contact the fire chief and find out if he's willing to do some more investigation for this particular thing. And I think the other thing, the three of us with input, need to decide is if this structure is not going to be used for public stuff or
Yeah.
not.
Right.
Because that is a big thing. If it is, that's a different direction. But I think we need to kind of decide these things as we go along in terms of what we think. Not that we can't come back and reevaluate,
And
but
when I spoke to the chief, if he's thinking 15, 20 years down the road, and we're having people that are here 24-hour shifts, that kind of thing, then having appropriate bunk rooms, having a kitchen where we were supposed to have a kitchen, and then possibly having the gym makes sense, because somebody's here 24 hours. So you have to make it livable, otherwise they're gonna go to some other place that has a more livable environment. So to me, that takes away this space, and that becomes livable space. That means we have downstairs, and I don't know if the police chief, I think he's talked about needing more space eventually as well. I don't know. Does
well,
anyone-
they've already used that space over there that's
Yeah.
corresponding with that one. So, but yeah, the original plans, this place was utilized for stuff for the public safety people. So,
So if we do what the original plan is, then we would go forward with the suppression system and all that stuff based on what, that would be just the fire and police here. And then that means we have to think about where do we have the things we're having next? Where do we have meetings for people? Where do we have select board meetings, that kind of. And then that,
yeah,
we have to answer that question, is that town hall, is that a new building?
well, I think then you have to explore in terms of what do you use for a town office building? And we brought up, was it you, Steve? Somebody brought up, see if we can buy the Daily building.
I've said that many
Okay,
times.
you look like Steve to me.
Well,
So,
it's pretty fabulous, I'll take it.
oh gosh. So we need to find out, one, if Mr. Daly is even interested.
Right,
If he says, heck no,
right.
then we know the answer.
Is that something that Andy could talk to him about?
I can certainly, I will probably enlist Karen to
I think we've asked her this summer
help me.
to do that. I'm not sure what happened.
So if we can, find out that one thing. If that isn't an option, then we need to look about doing something else.
But if that is an option, do you agree that that's a really feasible option because we have a finite dollar value, we know what we're dealing with, and we then, all the other pieces of the puzzle start to
Yeah.
make sense?
So,
And that would be a warrant article, that would be a, whatever.
well, one, how are you gonna pay for it?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that something you would have the town vote on and then,
Yeah, because we don't have, he's gonna want probably $1 million plus at least for that. So it's 125 frontage.
It's not worth $1 million plus.
no, I was
I don't
thinking
know.
more like 800, but something. Have you, because you, I mean, you look at the real estate,
How much is it assessed at?
right, I think it was, I looked at it recently and it was like, I don't remember, 700 or something else. So I think we should look into it.
Yeah.
But a finite amount that's not gonna go up would be very helpful to the
Yeah.
comfort of the town.
Well, it would be cheaper than building one.
And then all these investments that we have to do in that building would make sense because we're gonna keep it, where right now we're spending a lot of money. All this stuff is happening, we're paying rent, but we're also having to pay for like everything else. which
Yeah, so like
is really
something I
confusing.
didn't mention we did last night is we had to replace the pressure tank.
That's not
Right
normal.
before I got sick with COVID, Pete and I were in that building fixing the water softener system and replacing the pressure tank, because the bladder inside had split.
So
And we're
that's,
responsible for that?
right,
According
that
to
doesn't,
the lease, we are.
And
So
that's-
Pete and I were in there doing it, so we didn't have to hire a plumber, because that's not hard, we just needed to do it.
I've never had a lease in my life where I had to pay for all the things the building needed. All we're paying for $5,000, all we're getting is the space we're inside of, not heating it, not anything, not repairing it, not, to me, that doesn't make sense. So if we're gonna be doing all this stuff and down the road, it's $1 million, fine, but otherwise, this is not a lease that makes a ton of sense.
So, okay, at least we're making a little bit of progress on that. So if Mr. Daly isn't interested in selling it,
Then we move on from there.
then we move on from there. The other big nut that we have in here is the town hall, the old town hall.
Right.
What do we do with that? We know what the cost is. If we're interested in doing something with it, how are we gonna pay for it?
When you look at all the buildings that we have that have to be saved, that is absolutely, without a doubt, every person I've spoken to, that is their first priority, we must save building. So if that is how the town feels about it, and we're noticing just as soon as you open up the doors for use of that town, the library fills it, people would love to have meetings, that building very quickly becomes important. So if that's one to save, then we start working on it right away. But look at the
Yep.
price.
But it fulfills the need for space for
Space.
public meetings if we're not gonna use this space.
Bingo. So that already takes care of a lot of issues, and it works towards a lot of things working. really
Because
well.
if you think about space, let's say keep the town hall, the offices at the Daily Building.
Yep. and
That
still
meeting
need-
space is not big enough to have like this kind of meeting.
But
It's
the
just not
town
big
hall
enough.
is,
But the town hall would be.
which means you don't have to build a new building for town business at all.
This room is what, 1,200? And the town hall is 13?
No, this is a little under 1,000, 900 and something.
But the town hall's 13?
Downstairs is 1,300.
Oh, okay, that's the
In the
13.
town hall, the gross floor area is 1,256.
Okay.
Take out stairway and you're a little under 1,200.
Okay, so it's a little bit smaller than Nelson's.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's,
Yeah,
it's an easy.
but you could have these kind of meetings over there.
Yes. And you have a place where you can have a
Perfect.
conference room like that.
Yes.
Yep.
That's true,
Yeah, with one of those
natural thing.
iterations that you had in terms of your,
And there's a lot of other things the town hall could do, like we talked about on the weekends, a lot of communities, activities that could finally happen.
yeah. The other thing, John, remind me, in terms of the lease that we're paying for,
Yep.
how much of a bond does that buy us? 800,000?
Okay, so
Yeah, that's
down,
what's been bothering me all along.
um,
If you look at all my campaign, you'll see
I don't look at your campaign pieces. I'm supposed to be impartial.
town office building, way back when this was,
Okay? Yeah.
first put these numbers in, to have it happen in fiscal year 2029.
Yeah,
And I divided it into two pieces because of that question. And 900,000, at this time, the estimate was 1.5 million.
Yeah.
So 900,000 from capital reserve fund
Mhm.
and 600,000 from a bond. Right now, this is not entered as being from a bond, but you put a B in here and it's from a bond. And now down here, you have the two existing bonds, and then this new bond, 2029, the lookup table says 3.5%, and the payment, 75,000,
Okay.
and right now you're paying,
60.
and then it escalates.
It's 55 or something.
That's every 3 years, yeah. No, it's 5,000 a year, so
It's 60 right
60,000.
now.
So the budget last night's wrong then, because it's only budgeted for 50.
Yeah, that's wrong, and it's gonna go up in a few years. Yeah, so we're spending an
so I-
enormous amount of money.
So I think that this division of 900 and 600,000 is not quite correct because I've changed the interest rate schedule.
Okay.
The rates are going up more.
Hmm.
So we will have been able to buy the
so
building
that
by the time that we get to, which is what I think, to rent makes no sense if we're doing all the work, all the expenses, and then we own nothing at the end of 9 years.
Well, you can only buy it if you want to sell it.
Well, or we can build something else.
um,
But I don't think you can build that building for 800,000.
It was built for what, 250,000 when it was built a few years ago?
Well,
Yeah.
right, things change.
I know, I'm just saying, I think that if you try to make the building we all dream of, it's a lot more expensive than if you make the Daily building again. You find somewhere in between, but if we have a building that we like, it makes sense to buy it. The question is, he's looking at the rent and saying, if I'm gonna be getting the rent for more than the building's worth, and I don't have to fix anything.
Do you want to do the road and bridge one since there's 300 in there?
Okay.
Those are the big ones. Even though I'm pretty sure these were mostly, these are mostly actually funded by the CIP for that, for
Yes.
this.
So these numbers that are in here are from the CIP. And Steve, I did look up and find the costs that you based this on, which was
It was what our town share of High Road was.
High Road. The number I found was about 290,000,
Okay,
so
so 300
So-
was good.
rounds off to 300.
Great.
But I haven't put that in. I did add those new things that you just sent me today, they're small.
That's all part, those two things are all part of, do you remember when you wanted me to start putting together a plan
Yes,
for the drainage and the easement? So this is the start of that, and what we've identified as the roads that needed to be done.
great.
Obviously, this isn't more expensive when the road's way, way bigger. But that is defining the right-of-way for the entire James Farm / Woodhead Circle development.
And that will help us down the road.
Yes, and then the other smaller one is in there, so that would be that cost to do the whole thing. The other smaller one, the only other development we don't have easements on is Decato Drive. There's a pipe that needs to be replaced on that road, it's starting to collapse at the inlet. It drains out in between two people's yards to flat, so you really have to dig their yards up and get it to flow, but that would be to gain an easement and do the survey needed on Decato Drive to get that one done. That's not finding, this has nothing to do with finding the right of way, because that's the only drainage pipe on the whole road, so that would just be to fix the drainage issue, so we don't have a problem like we.
Is that the work included or just that their estimate?
No, we have to do that, that's to get
Okay,
them,
So we
that's
still
to
have-
get it so we can get the easement and have everything done and make sure the water flows.
but then do we know how much would cost us to do that work?
8 tons of hot top probably for the road, and the pipe and us, less than $2,000.
Okay, so it's not a huge number.
Yeah, to do the actual work itself isn't that much. It's just,
Getting
this
done.
is the expensive part.
Okay, but then we'd have a solution and we wouldn't have a problem down the road.
this is all being presented to you Monday night. I was gonna come do
Sorry.
that, but it's here now, just so.
John, can you go back to the, out of this, can you get back to, in terms of the, no, out of this,
Oh,
please?
you don't wanna look at this.
I don't look at that. I want to look at over here in terms of how much are we planning to put away? 60, then 110, and,
Yes,
all right, and how far out does that go to 110? All the way to, what, 30 years out, or what does it go out to?
So we were spending 60, and now we're having to start spending a lot.
and by 2036, it drops to 0.
I don't believe
Well,
that.
then all the new things even
All the
though.
new things will come out.
Correct. So it's all being driven by the last bridge here,
And Iron Bridge.
which way out there from the 300,000
Yep.
in, actually today's cost is 307. It's 423 by the time you get out to 2035.
All right.
And that might change, it depends on what kind of grants we get. These numbers were just based off High Road, because
Okay.
it's gonna be extremely difficult for someone to give me a price on how to replace a bridge, it's just not.
It's not gonna happen.
And then the top one on this was the one I mentioned last night, which I think was, if you scroll up, the Chesley Brook culvert for 140, that probably isn't gonna cost us 140.
So what is the typical
That's the
amount
one
we spend?
for the ARM fund. That's probably gonna be closer to
That's
like,
Packers Falls one?
yeah, that's probably gonna be closer to like 85 or 90.
all
with the
the
amount of money that-
vehicles?
I think we're gonna get for that.
Would you say that for all of these, that there's a percentage that we would find funding for, generally speaking? or is-
Yeah, because you always would find, the only one we're not gonna get money for would be the Tuttle Road pipe by the Stevens property. But
Okay.
because we've played ball with DES and done this pipe, they're counting that as mitigation to let me slip line Tuttle Road for the 60,000.
Wow, okay. So, could we, in this estimate on this thing, is there some kind of a percentage we could look at just for a better estimated guess of how much the town would be responsible for?
That is what the town, for what? The town's responsible for 300. High Road cost 1.1 million,
Okay.
somewhere
So
around
that,
there.
it's already been adjusted.
The 300,000 is what the town paid for High Road, so that's already been done there.
Thank you.
Because it's
I don't know.
20 and 80, right, still?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And then the only thing that we need to be aware of with this is we have to pay
First.
all 1.1 million, and then we get reimbursed the 80%. So you, but if you have it in the unassigned fund balance, you're fine,
Okay.
and then the state just pays you the money back, but you fund everything up front, then they pay you back.
Okay, thank you. That helps when people ask us why we have money in unassigned fund balance.
So Chesley Brook won't do that, because it's not that kind of fund, but the state aid bridge fund is that way.
And you just have to be careful in terms of the unassigned fund balance, that's not all cash. So just be aware of that.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Because you have to, it has to be cash in order to be taken by the,
yeah, well,
the
you can't
payments.
get blown out of the stone, because some of that is, people haven't paid their taxes, stuff like that, so you just have to be careful.
And I think we added one pipe in, at least I'm pretty sure I remember emailing John to add a pipe. And that would, no, we did not. So there's one more pipe that needs to be added. It's on Jenkins Road, and it's the same creek that Chesley Brook is on Packers Falls Road, and I'm scared that they're gonna make me,
Do it all over again?
yeah, even though it's a mile or so upstream, I don't trust them. It's the same watershed, same thing.
So we have come a long way, even though we don't have exact points, but we have started to make some
You had a
decisions.
question?
I don't know how you measure. I don't see a long ways that we've come. The only decision we've made is to find out if we can buy the Daley building.
Well, I think,
And I think that Scott had a good approach when we look at the list, if you would, that we need to start picking, what should we do first?
exactly.
We've been working on building a building for years, and we haven't been, real good at being able to get anything done.
No,
And we still have issues with parish houses and
yeah, that's
all these other things that I think we need to deal with. Plus, there is still an ongoing rumbling of building a new town hall.
If we don't have one, yeah.
Huh?
If we don't have one, we have to.
Well, yes, if we don't have one, you're absolutely right. And therein lies the issue. Where is town hall? You know, what are we gonna do? And that's why we bought or released the Daily building was to vacate the people so we could do certain work on buildings and so on.
Well, also for
I think we need to revisit where we were, let's say, a year or whatever ago. We seem to have direction, and now all of a sudden we're talking about, gee, where's this building gonna go? And I think
What was the direction that you felt we had a year ago? Because I didn't feel like we had direction a year ago.
I can't.
What was the direction you felt a year ago that we had?
Well, we had a separate committee that was looking at it and coming to the board and suggesting what we should do, what we shouldn't do. We stalled out. We stalled out. That's basically what we did. We had a lot of work done. We had a lot of drawings done. We had a lot of architectural fees come in. We had a lot of information, but we stalled out, so I don't really know how to answer it. I think approaching this list that we're looking at here and picking out, agreeing amongst us, you know, what's the order of priority for this? It's a lot of money. What's the order of priority that we should put together for this? And let's get started on it.
I agree.
And in the interim, if we get a price for the Daily building and we feel as though, one, you're gonna be able to take it to the voters and have it passed.
And that's the problem though, is that if you have the Daily building, it changes all the other things. And if you don't, now that'll.
I don't know that it changes all the other things. I don't know that it changes this building because you have the Daily building.
It changes
So-
what you do with the library, it changes how you use the town hall.
I don't know that it, I think that's how you feel, I understand that, but I'm not sure that it really changes the Daily building. I think the library, you know, we've had all kinds of discussions about the library and so on. The library to me is kind of a keystone building for the center of the town,
Right.
but so is this building. When you think about it, this building is a very, very key building to the town. And it's still a very, very nice looking building. It's got some issues, it's got age, it's got issues, it goes together. But I really think we should start nibbling on this list and start doing some of these things, or else make a decision and say, no, we don't need to do that today.
Right.
We need to do something different. The fire suppression system, if we want to move that up to the top of the list, and at least get more information as to,
Yeah, I think that needs to happen right
you
away.
know, what it would take, what it's gonna take to install, how long is it gonna take to install it, what's the best system to get, then I think that's where we should start. As far as starting if you would, starting something to give us some momentum. And then we look at the Daily building and we start looking and say, okay, what's our option? If we buy the Daily building, which personally I think is gonna be difficult to do
Mhm.
from a warrant article point of view,
Yeah.
but I would like us to start nibbling on this, pick out the one or two big ones to get going. Big, not necessarily in dollars, but in importance. And just get some momentum.
I really need to interrupt, because I think you are about to make the same mistake that you've made before. When this process started, town buildings had 10 line items on it. All of these other things that are here, and some of them are really big, hundreds of thousands of dollars, those needs still existed, but
They
they
just
weren't
weren't
on
covered.
anybody's to-do list.
Exactly.
They were not recognized. And I think you need to recognize the progress that you have made in identifying these things, and that process isn't finished yet.
Right.
Well, we've not only developed things, but we've developed a tool to manage things.
Yes, but you haven't
Thanks to
finished.
But I'm just saying, we're in a position where we can make some decisions here and start getting some.
No, you're not.
direction, that's all.
You are in a position where you can start making some bad decisions
Or good decisions.
by luck, because you haven't finished the process of identifying all of the need. In all, not just in town buildings, but in all of these other areas also. And I know that this is frustrating. I mean, I can see the frustration.
No.
And I tell you, I mean, I come from a place where this level of detail was trivial. I mean, this wasn't even enough to barely even get started. And where we all recognize that until we had all of these details, there was no point in making decisions with, until you completed the basics of adding the pieces up.
Right.
And I think you need to recognize that you really are in a much better place than you were a quarter of a year ago, or half a year ago, because half a year ago, all these things were just unidentified. And yet they were still real.
They've always existed, no one's just taking care of them, that's all.
All I'm saying is we need to pick out something and.
Well, we've asked
No.
Andy to do two things
The long
already.
journey starts with the first step. We need to make the first step.
Right.
We've been stepping, but we've given Andy two things to check up on, so that's something.
That's fine.
But I think the thing that is also very frustrating is because some of these things are new initiatives, new projects, or new stuff. Some of it is maintenance that we just have not done.
Right.
And that's what's hitting us, two
That's
sides of
where
the
town
face.
is already bad.
Yeah, well, yes and no. The thing is also in terms of, we need to present these things and see if they'll pay for them.
Right.
So they can choose not to pay for them, that's their choice, but.
And we're talking about putting a lot of money into this building relative to some of the systems. I mean, and at the same, in almost the same sentence, we're talking about, well, gee, where's this building gonna be in 5 years?
Well, it's two different
You know,
things.
Hey,
That's what I'm saying, two different things.
So do we
This
invest
building is
enough?
maintenance, the other things we're talking about are new particular projects, a new
I
office
understand,
building
but
with us.
if you're gonna put $2 million into a fire suppression system and a new pump and a this and a that,
And plan on keeping the building.
then you're automatically saying this sucker's gonna be here for.
Which is why we don't want to do any of those decisions until we've actually thought about all of them. That's what, I think that's what you're trying to say.
Oh, we've been thinking about it for a long time.
And first, you need to decide what is the need for this building for fire department and police department.
To know what you're doing with.
Because the demand for those services is external, you cannot control it.
Well, I think we kind of talked about, this building is no longer going to be in how many ever years we talked about for public use.
Right.
So
That
I think we
changes how
kind of, that changes how you look at this.
So we said that, but what makes it that way? Why is that?
Because
We need the
Under,
space.
what's gonna happen that says it's no longer good for public use?
Do you know how many firemen, full-time firemen the town is gonna have in 15
No.
to 20 years? Well, why don't you?
Right.
That's the
You have
problem.
some idea, you have
is-
some idea to the end of that. I mean, this is a small community, you know what you've got for conservation land, you have some idea of build-out for this community, and I think you could make some pretty good assumptions about what you're looking at population level in 15 or 20 years. I mean, this is not different than a number of other small southern New Hampshire
I
towns.
agree.
But when you look at what we've done in our,
Coupled with that is the way that those employees, the employees that you need, because we are going very strongly away from volunteers that we can no longer get, to needing more and more, and away from part-timers, to needing more and more full-time.
if you look at both our police department and our fire department, we just keep expanding. And I've asked several times, so when are we done? Like if we keep this population around here, when are we done? And I can't get that answer from anyone. And I think that's one thing that's hard, is that if we're not looking at that number, when if somebody comes and says, we need more than one person, how do we say, oh, no, I think you're good, like, we'll have to figure out how to make it work with this. And I think, you know, just like we did plan for buildings, we also have to think about what's the future of those departments as well.
Well, those needs are, like John says, they're external. We have no control over those. We can't say, okay, well, fire, you're only doing 2 fires this week because we can't afford to do more. That's not how it works.
But if you're the fire department, if you're the chief of a fire department or police department,
Yeah.
you always want to grow it and expand it and offer more services. At some point, you have to say, okay, like, we're at the point where we as a town are satisfied with those services, and we don't want to continue to, like, as a department head, you never want to stop expanding. So how do we say, but this is where we are comfortable, we don't want to expand past here?
But we don't have control over that.
We
Because
do.
no, we don't. Because you can control people in your particular town. You cannot control the people that go through our town. So, you know, if there was no 125 and no Route 4, we'd be a totally different town. And traffic on those particular roads keeps increasing every single year.
What you choose to police or deal with in some ways is actually a choice.
It's-
And then with like fires, you don't get to choose that.
It's nowhere near the choice that library
Right.
or leaf fair or recreation, those things are largely driven by induced demand.
Right.
But you ask the police chief, when he says he has to provide that officer to the court for 6 hours, he has no control over that.
Right.
And I
John, if you
think,
start a flow chart, just start a flow chart that says buy daily building, yes, no, okay? If it's a yes, here's what we do. If it's a no, here's what we do.
It just gets
Because
canceled real quick.
I think he's gonna give a pretty quick answer. I could be wrong, or he might just say, let me think about it.
Right.
Can I say something?
Yes.
'Cause I'm gonna stand up for my department for a second.
Yeah.
All I hear is police and fire, police and fire,
Yes.
police and fire. We have a building you have to play limbo in to move around in the
Bingo.
wintertime. And we have no room,
Right.
like 0 room.
And you
We
have a
don't
couple
have a kitchen.
staffing.
There's
right?
no place to sleep, and I sleep there in the wintertime.
Bingo.
There's nothing.
So how do we make sure that those needs are getting met? And that's why I've been happy to
and
see
it's,
this, but,
and the need there is entirely external.
exactly.
But the highway department always plays second fiddle to police and
But it
fire.
doesn't need to.
But it's the way it is, and it's not just Lee, it's every single town is that way. If the state police get a better contract in the retirement system than highway department people do, it's always that way. We do everything on our own over there. We have no room to work on trucks, we can't weld anything. You know, we could get rid of half our trucks, and then you're gonna pay $100 and something an hour to plow snow in the winter. Where we're buying a truck for $5,000 and it's lasting us 10 years. It doesn't make sense to hire out. And that's what my predecessor knew, which is why we have the amount of equipment we have. And we don't have the room. We're fitting in a 2-bay garage, a loader and 3 dump trucks. And that's the place where we do all our cutting and welding, and that's where all the mechanic work gets done.
So I appreciate that, Steve, and that's why I'm really glad you're here tonight, because I think it's very easy for us, especially because we're sitting in this room, to think about one area, and I think it's so important that we're not forgetting that, and that is a department that continuously makes do, saves money, thinks of how to do it for the cheapest possible way, and instead of getting, you know, credit and, you know, the praise and the money that they need to do things, it just kind of keeps being that way.
And the thing is, I was talking about, because I have to hold speed.
Yes.
I was talking about this particular structure,
No, I know.
all those particular departments, and one of the things we found, and Andy probably knows this as well, that it's much easier to get public safety funded warrant articles than anything else.
I know that.
So that's one of the reasons that town hall never got passed, because there wasn't that kind of urgency. People think about public safety as like, oh, I gotta have that, because I might need it,
So it's
versus
using-
town hall, that's,
He's using ARPA
Well-
funds for that.
I just go there to do my paying my taxes, and that's about it. I don't really give a hoot what they, you know.
You gotta
But
figure out
that's
how
how
to make
people
it a
think.
conservation project,
Yeah.
Real support.
That's waning in this particular town. We did many years and people got sick of it,
You
so.
have a really good story though.
Warrant articles for highway equipment and roads and bridges are well supported.
In this town, yeah.
Yes, I think people recognize that the
But we're
roads.
talking about buildings.
Yeah.
No, not the buildings.
I'm talking about
Because they're recognizing the equipment and they recognize their roads are well taken care of. And I think that there's great support for the department.
So are we making
There
a
hasn't been
mistake
a
by
record.
trying to do something that we know will pass with the town, like the funding for the police and fire, when what we really need to do is take care of buildings that are gonna get ignored and not taken care of with ARPA funds,
Well, I
and
think
then ask for
that's the
money?
balancing act, because
I
there's
appreciate bringing that
certain,
to attention.
there's certain things that we can do internally that we don't need to go outside and say, hey, we need money for this particular
Right.
thing. So, and I'm not trying to make that out as being deceptive.
No,
It's
no,
just
no.
like,
The
there's
focus.
different ways to, skin a cat, if you will. Not that
Right.
I'm into animal cruelty, but there's different ways. And people think about things differently. So you
Right.
have to be cognizant of that, because
Well,
and Mr. Brown, we just brought it up in terms of, we've banged our head against the wall in terms of this office building. We've done it 3-4 times. Nothing's happened. We've wasted a lot of energy and goodwill, if you will.
Yeah,
And it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. The people who worked on those particular committees, they're getting burned out,
Yeah.
coming back year after year.
Yeah.
And I think we need to stop doing that and find another way to do it.
100%.
So,
But I like this idea too, that we need to think about what are the things that are not glamorous, but are, it's like,
Yeah.
what's the spinach in this that nobody wants to pay for, nobody wants to vote for, but we have to eat for our health?
yeah. So that's where you can use some of these particular other funding sources. We also, and we mentioned it earlier, in terms of the unassigned fund balance, we can't use tons of money,
Right.
but that's a possibility. This board has said that, whatever we have as a surplus one year, it gets put against the tax rate the next year.
Which we did this year.
And that was $250,000.
Right.
That does lots of
A bunch of
things.
those things,
That
yeah.
does lots of things, so maybe, that's something we look at as well. So there's a lot of different things. I think we need to get a little bit more creative than we have.
I agree.
And also, in terms of Mr. Brown's point, we need to put out to the voters, this is what our plan is. This is what we plan for.
Yep.
And see if they support it, because ultimately, they're the ones that have to pay for it.
Right.
And if they're not behind us, we can bang our heads against the wall as many times with the best plans that we can come up with, and it's not gonna
And I
pass.
think what we need to do is, there needs to be, I don't think we have the time and the energy as a select board to go through every single one of these and suss out which category it is. But I do think it'd be great if there was somebody who could say, these are wants, these are needs, that kind of thing. It's one thing to say, like, we have to have safety for, people that are sleeping here, that's one thing. Another thing is, do we keep the annex building because it's historical and we like it and we enjoy it? If it is, then we need to figure out, well, okay, this money comes from here and this money comes from there. And I think that almost feels like something that we need to think about having some fresh eyes on.
What else do you wanna tell us, Steve?
Sorry.
Well, the highway addition one, that price is based off of what Alan Diesel, that's what, close to what he paid for his. Obviously, the buildings would be shaped way, way different, but that was a fairly easy one to figure out. Hey, Alan, what you pay for your addition? Simple.
And what was that total again?
It was 175.
175, which is more than his was, but that was because of
Well,
changes in
everything's
features.
changed.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, you have more doors, obviously, and we try to put something in so we could utilize all the waste oil at the transfer.
So that would be your number one.
Well, at the highway department it would be, that's not my number one.
What's your number one?
My number one is, my opinion is you need to do health and safety things
Yep.
that are on that list. So, obviously, health and safety would be the sprinkler system,
Mhm.
exhaust, Tom's air handler, things like that.
What about in your department?
I don't think I don't think it behooves the town to spend money, a lot of money on buildings that no one is currently in,
Mhm.
because we're not in them. That doesn't mean I think you should just let them rot either. I think you need to keep doing stuff to the town hall or the old town hall and things, but
Well, I would submit to you, Steve, that the addition to the shop is a health and safety issue.
Because because of the space and having the ability to manage, you mean, or what do you mean?
so that back shop was built in 1973 with the plan of having an addition on it. In one wall, there is a,
And it's a door, right?
yeah, well, there was a door, there's not. So I found out there was not a secondary exit in that building.
Yeah.
When the former cemetery trustees came in, when I first started and cornered me, and there was no second way out to run. So I hid between the trucks and then figured the gig was up, so I went out and talked to them, but.
I don't think that's what our code means for a second exit. I don't think that's
No,
how
but
it
there
works.
is no secondary exit other than the doors, but they had made it so you could expand that way.
Oh, can I circle back to something that
Yeah.
that John was talking about, and this is for Andy really, and I don't know if you two have had a conversation, but the board's plan is, and John's volunteered to work us through the development phase of this. At some point, John's gonna be turning over to the selectman's office. So at that point, it becomes our baby. So he's just here to help us through the process and develop it. So he's graciously done that for us. So it's not his forever and ever,
No.
it's just his during the development phase, just so you know that.
And I appreciate that, because I appreciate the hard work that John has obviously put into this, but I'm looking at it from a couple of different angles. One, if you're making budget decisions on a document and a protocol that nobody else has access to,
Yeah.
you have 91A3 problems,
Yep.
Yep.
and just the usefulness of it.
And just also to be clear, the CIP will continue to be done by the planning board. That's their tool. This is our tool. So it will include things that are in there, but this is more of an all-encompassing, how are we gonna pay for all these particular things? So those two things are two separate things. So if somebody says, oh, the financial planning tool, oh, that's a new CIP. No, that's not what it is. So, and that's something that people get confused about.
This is obviously head and shoulders above the CIP.
Well, I
in
was just
detail.
saying, I hope that one day they look at some of the stuff and then can add that, because it's all important, and it's not on there.
But it also gives a second pair of eyes to this whole process.
Correct.
So they don't have anything to do with us, because they're, all by themselves. They're a different entity, but it gives a different look in terms of the process.
Yep.
So that's more for you than.
Nope, I appreciate that explanation.
So what can we do tonight so we can get everyone to go home? That we can, I'm just looking at for Steve.
Well,
because
Well,
we're here all day.
so
We've given Andy two things to do.
Yeah.
So,
that phone call I took, is there any way we can go into non-public about lawyer things
Without notice.
without notice?
If it was a continuation from last night,
The meeting is posted, so you could certainly make,
Yeah.
and you'd make it under 91A32L.
okay,
We
legal
kind of
advice.
need to.
we
okay,
kind of need to.
Mhm.
okay.
Well, are we done this? What are we gonna do?
We
for
have
the
enough
next
work
meeting?
that Andy's working on to get us information so we know which direction we're going, and then. what
I'll
else do
start
you want?
working on the fire suppression system tool
All
on
right,
this.
so when are we meeting again for this?
I'll talk to you, Scott.
2
So
weeks?
so you didn't talk at all about transfer station?
Oh, did we want to talk about that quickly while we have Steve, so we just make him come again?
Well, I'm gonna have to come back for highway equipment anyway, so.
Well, are these really that hard? I hate you having to come here all the time. Is there,
That's what it is. The transfer station one's a mess now, because we've moved it all around.
if we took 10 minutes, could we knock it out? No?
Been here since 1 o'clock this morning,
That's
so.
what I'm saying, like, how do we get you home?
No. No, let's not do it today.
All right,
I'll just come back next time and we'll just keep plugging away, it's fine.
2 weeks?
all right.
That's the 10th, I think. The
Yep.
calendar person,
Lady
Monday
Yes,
is
it's
the
the
first,
10th.
so.
10th is November, day before veterans.
Yeah, we're here on the 27th, so 1 week is the 3rd.
That's what
So
we'll say.
10th of November, Andy, could you do 5 o'clock? If you could, please.
Everyone else? And we're having Steve come again?
We're having Steve come again, yes.
Steve, does that work
Because
for
we
you and
love
your
Steve and
family?
would like to see him.
The other ones that you haven't done, fire equipment, ponds and cisterns,
Can we do that on a night where we have Chief Nemet here?
I hate to say it, but the way I keep going, you might have more building things.
I think you will, so I think we should not have Nemet here the
Let's-
same day.
Yeah, let's do the next meeting and see where we are, and then we can schedule another one, and if we need them, we'll ask them to move.
And I haven't heard anything from
I'm-
recreation.
I'm starting to sink fast. So
Okay.
if we're
Well,
gonna-
let's do the non-public and then
Yeah, let's do it.
get out of it.
And let's
Okay.
take it. And-
So do
Thank
you
you.
have a,
I don't have a non-public statement.
I would suggest that you make a motion under 91A32L, legal matters.
so moved?
So moved.
6:55, Mr. Brown
I'll
made a
second that.
motion. Scott made a motion and
Yes.
Mr. Brown seconded.
Great. and
Roll
we
call.
all voted aye,
Roll call.
yes.
Roll call. Do your roll call.
Oh, yes.
Casper, yes. Bugby, yes.
Yeah, yes.
I'm
Are you
asking
running the,
the
go ahead,
question.
go
I'm just
ahead.
trying to move us along.
Go ahead, go ahead.
I said yes, you said yes, and Mr. Brown said
Motion passes.
yes. Great. Thank you.
Adjourn.
No,
Bye, Steve.
I move to seal the minutes from the non-public session.
I second the motion.
Okay, roll call vote.
Mr.
Yeah.
Bugby says yes.
Selectman Brown, yes.
Katrin Casper says yes.
Motion passes.
Great. And now we motion to adjourn?
You can
No,
just
we say
adjourn.
Or
adjourn.
just say adjourn? Thank you.